Welcome back, everybody. Unit 8, Reducing Your Carbon Footprint. We're at the end of Unit 8. So we're going to do Focus on Speaking. If you can open your textbook and go to page 193. Here we go. And of course, we're going to review the vocabulary that we have studied throughout the unit. That means listening 1 and listening 2. Now, first thing you're going to do is you're going to complete the statements. So you're going to use the words from the box. As you can see, there are several words in the box. Can be 3, can be 4. You're going to place the correct word in a correct sentence, completing the statement. So this means using the words in the correct context. You can pause your video to do this. Go ahead. Great, that brings us to the part of expanding, means that we're still busy with the vocab, same words, but we're gonna do something more with it. Now, most of the times we're looking at the part of speech, like how do these words work as a noun, as a verb, or as an adjective, sometimes even as an adverb. Okay, so you are going to complete the chart with the missing word forms. So that's the part of speech, yes? If you're confused, you can just Google it. The first one is done for you. For instance, it starts with the verb transport. And so the word form of transport as a noun would be transportation. And in this case, there's no adjective of it. So you're going to do consumption, emissions. And then the third word, you can look at the adjective energy efficient. Generation, dense, resource, industry, and technology. Go ahead, fill out the chart. Okay, so you have already completed the chart, so you know what these words are in the form of a noun, or in this case a verb or an adjective, yeah? I want you to read the sentence pair. So there's like two, with each number there are like 2 sentences. Each sentence has a different form of the same word. So for example, you have the word transportation and you have the word transport. As we can see just now from the chart, transportation is a noun and transport can be a verb. So I want you to complete each sentence. Now you have to write the correct word form in that sentence to complete that sentence. So be sure to use the correct form of each word. So singular or plural noun, singular if it's one, plural if it's more than one. And subject-verb agreement, making sure that if the subject is singular, the verb should be singular. If the subject is plural, more than one, your verb should be plural. Now we can see that number 1 is done for us. I use buses, trains, and other kinds of public transportation to get to and from work. Yeah, you see here buses, trains, and other kinds. It's all plural. I use my car, that is singular, when I have to transport large or heavy things. I'd like you to finish up numbers 2 until 9. You can pause your video to do that. Very good. That brings us to the part of creating. You know this already mostly. We then use those same words to create something, to do something with it. Now, in this case, you're supposed to make a small group and then read the statements out loud. And then you could respond to each other by either agreeing or disagreeing. And then you could use the language like I agree or I disagree with the statement because I think, or I don't think because, or I think this is, or this isn't a good idea because. And then you use the vocab in the box. Now we will do this in class when we meet. So during our lesson. So I would still want you to think about the statements number 1 until 5 and come up with an opinion, what you think of it. So whenever I'm going to ask you in class or during our Zoom meeting, you can answer. Okay, so please read the statements and write down whether you agree or disagree. Yeah, and be ready to use the correct statements of agreeing or disagreement and using the words or phrases from the box. Go ahead. Yeah, that brings us to the grammar part. Obviously, we always have that, right? Yeah. So in this case, we're going to read the interview. The bold-faced words are actually the models of necessity. So necessity means when we need something, when something is very important. So we start here with the host who says, what do individuals have to do to reduce their personal carbon footprint? So we have the model of necessity, have to. Well, we all have to drive less. We also need better public transportation so that we don't have to take our cars everywhere. And what else? Well, everyone must work together. We cannot solve this problem alone, and we must not wait too long to make these changes, or else our climate will change forever. So what we can see here that shows the models of necessity as have to, yeah, don't have to, must, and must not. Awesome. So there are two questions here. Number one, what is the difference between have to and must? What do you think? Write it down. And number two, what is the difference between doesn't have to and must not? I'd like to know what you think of it. So please answer those two questions. Write it down on the line in your book. So models of necessity, we use have to and must to tell when something is very necessary, so it's needed. Have to usually is used in conversation and informal writing. Must is mostly used in writing. So must is a bit stronger than have to, and it sounds also a little bit more formal. So as an example, we have to find ways to reduce emissions, and we can say we must stop global warming. They mean the same. Must is just a bit stronger and a little bit more formal. So mostly used for writing. Use the correct form of have to for all the tenses. So we have to make changes today. We had to. We will have to. So make sure that you change it in the right tense as it should be written or spoken. Use must only for present and future tenses. Yeah, so future and present. So we can say we must make changes today, or we must make more changes in the future. You do not use must for the past. Use have to for questions. What do individuals have to do? Yeah, so the notice must is almost never used in questions. So when you do make a question, formulate a question, use have to. Do they have to stop driving? Yeah, you don't say, do they must? That's weird. No, we don't do that. And number 4, use don't or doesn't have to when something is not necessary. Obviously, when there is a choice, such as we don't have to drive everywhere, or we must not, or we can't wait too long to make changes. So use must not when something is prohibited. There's no choice. So when there is a choice, you can say don't and doesn't have to, but where there is no choice, you say must not. We must not, or we can't wait too long. No choice. So in spoken English, can't is often used instead of must and not. Okay. So you kind of have to remember that, yeah, to know how to answer. So you're going to read the rest of the interview and circle the correct answers of the usage of these models. And I'd like you to do that. You can pause your video to answer this. Those are numbers 1 until 8. Go ahead. Okay, for the grammar, it's always important that you understand. Because if you understand, you would know how to use it, right? So these are the models that show when something is necessary or needed, yeah? So we have a list of suggestions that we can use to discuss how to reduce our personal carbon footprint. So we can use have to, must, don't have to, and must not or can't. For instance, here there's a student who would say or could say, I think that we must build more public transportation. And then student B could answer, yeah, I agree. We have to stop driving everywhere. We can't rely on cars so much. Now, there are a lot of things we can talk about from number 1 to 8. I would like you to look at it. Think about it a bit, because in class, once we meet, I will be asking you this, and I really would want you to be able to answer by using have to or must as their, and don't have to, must not, and can't. So I'd like you to use those models and to answer. Okay. Remember that must is stronger than have to. And don't and doesn't have to, we have a choice. But if we say must not, means there is no choice. Yeah? Very good. That brings us to pronunciation, intonation. Yeah. That means it's what you're doing with your voice. Like you're going up, you're going down. That's intonation. Yeah. When you finish speaking, your voice should fall to a low note. You automatically go down. When you have more to say but need some time to think, your voice doesn't fall to a low note. It stays on the same note as the previous word. So we can listen to that to hear. Let's try it out.
If you're worried about the environment, you shouldn't drive to work.
I know.
You should take the bus.
I know. But I think it's faster when I drive.
Now you hear a clear intonation here, yeah? So you can use I know to agree or disagree. And when we use I know to disagree, we often follow it with but. I know, but. Yeah, that's in the second part. We can see that. So we can hear when the person is done talking, the voice goes down. When the person is not really done yet, it kind of stays at the same note. Yeah. I want you to listen to the sentences, number 1 until 8. Is the speaker finished or not? That's the first question. If the speaker is finished, I want you to put a period at the end of the sentence. That means that you know that the voice goes down to a low. If the speaker is going to continue, so is not done talking, so that means that you hear that the voice is kind of staying at the same note, not really going down deep. I want you to put ellipses, those 3 dots. That would mean that the speaker is going to continue. Okay, so dot, period, when the person is done talking, when the voice goes down, and ellipsis, the 3 dots, when the person is not speaking yet, and the voice doesn't drop low. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to turn on the audio. You're going to listen, and you're going to mark number 1 to 8. Let's go.
1. I'm going to start riding my bike to work. 2.
I'm not going to use the air conditioner so much.
3.
I'm going to volunteer to clean up the park.
4.
I always turn off the lights.
5. I drive to school once a week. 6.
I'm going to buy a hybrid.
7.
I'm going to vote for green candidates.
8.
I'm going to recycle bottles and cans.
Awesome. Very good. Okay, obviously these sentences, the ones that you have put an ellipsis to, are not finished. And it would be great if you can finish them with your own ideas. So look at the unfinished sentences in exercise 1. Those are the ones that you've given an ellipsis. And you can try finish the sentence with your own ideas. Yeah? Okay, so don't let your voice fall if the sentence isn't done. If the sentence is done, then your voice goes down. Here we have several statements about environment to which we can agree or disagree. And so we can discuss. So we have student A's statements 1 to 3 and student B's statement 1 to 3. If we have enough time, we will be discussing this when we meet in class during our lesson. Please read through the statements and try to come up with opinions. So when we meet, it's easier to discuss it. Great. That brings us to the speaking skill. Yeah. Strategies for interrupting politely. Oh, wow. Is interrupting even politely? Well, in a conversation or discussion, sometimes we want to interrupt, especially in discussions, and we can do that in a way that is still polite. So during a discussion, you can politely interrupt the speaker and take a turn. Now, a person might interrupt to share an idea or an opinion, maybe to ask a question, or to ask the speaker to repeat something because maybe she didn't really hear or didn't understand. So sounds and gestures, words to ask for clarification and explanation, and words to make a comment. Now, for instance, sounds and gestures could be clearing your throat, like raising your hands, raise your index finger, make eye contact with the speaker. That could show that you're actually interrupting. You want to say something, you want something repeated. If it comes to words to ask for clarification or explanation, could be, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Or could you explain that, please? Or excuse me, could you say that again? Excuse me, can I ask a question? Or I'm sorry, can I ask something? Those are ways that you could formulate to ask for clarification or explanation. Words to make a comment could be, hey, I'd like to yada yada add something. I'd like to make a point. I'd like to, but, or can I say something? These are ways that we could interrupt politely. That brings us to the strategies for holding the floor. So if someone interrupts you in a discussion, doesn't mean you have to allow it. You can allow it, but you can also decline. So if you are speaking and someone interrupts you, you can hold the floor, which means you can keep talking and you can decline. You don't have to allow the person to interrupt you. So if you aren't ready to be interrupted, then don't let them interrupt you. Now, for instance, sounds and gestures could be that if somebody goes like, hey, can I say something? You just keep talking, or you speak louder, or you don't look at the person who is interrupting you, or you put your hand up to show that you want to, the other person to wait, like, hey, or, wait. Words for holding the floor would be when you want to show and make sure that the person understands that you're not done. Like, okay, just a minute, or just a second, or hold on a minute, or let me finish, please, or I'm not done yet. That's also a way that you could decline someone interrupting you, which is still polite. That is not rude. When interrupting and holding the floor, it is usually most effective to combine sounds and gestures with words and phrases. That way, it makes it, you communicate your message just a bit more clear. Yeah, good. Okay, here we see a cartoon picture, and I'd like you to answer the questions. Like number 1, where are the man and the woman? 2, what is the man doing? And 3, how is the woman responding to him? Please answer those questions. Okay, completes the classroom discussion, which we have here. Write phrases for interrupting and holding the floor, and then we could practice the conversation when we meet each other, yeah? So it's a conversation between Kyo Hyun and Bridget and Sam. And it starts, so what are the effects of global warming? One is that cyclones are bigger and more frequent. And Bridget comes in asking for clarification. What would she say, or what would she do? Now, you got to fill that out. What do you think would be suitable to put in number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? I hope we get some time to discuss this together when we meet in class. Yeah, that would be great, because then we can practice it. That brings us to the last part of our video today. That is your speaking project. You know already that you have to lead and participate in an academic seminar, which means that you're going to use the vocabulary, the grammar of this unit, but you're also going to use holding the floor, and interrupting politely. You're also going to use intonation to show when you're finished or you're not finished talking. And you're going to use models of necessity to show when something is very needed and necessary, yes or no. So all the material learned in this unit, you should incorporate in your project. So I told you already, you have to choose several subtopics. You are going to talk about climate change, and then every one of you is going to present shortly and prepare one question. That's enough, one question to lead a discussion. So everybody gets to lead, everybody gets to present shortly, and everybody gets to lead a short discussion. Yes? So choose the subtopics that your group wants to use. And here, as I told you before, are examples. You need to use visuals. So I want to see pictures that present what you're talking about and statistics that present evidence. Yeah. So here are examples of global CO2 emissions, the bar graph, and some example discussion questions. Yeah, you guys only need to take one, otherwise it's going to be way too long. Another subtopic could be transportation. This is another bar graph with some example questions. Then we've got another subtopic, which is natural disasters and global warming, also a bar graph with example discussion questions. And last one, for the last subtopic, we have a map, which is sea level rise and global warming, and some example discussion questions. So you can use whatever you think is the best to use for you, okay? For your group. So make sure that as a group you discuss this correctly well, so everybody knows what to do. And so everybody needs to prepare his or her own small short presentation and discussion. So prepare the material, prepare your own visuals, and prepare your discussion question. Yeah? So good. Awesome. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our lesson today. What did we do? We reviewed the vocabulary which we had learned in this unit, used that to complete statements, to complete a chart with parts of speech, noun, verbs, and adjectives, and we learned to use them in sentences using the words with different parts of speech in sentences. Then we went over our grammar models of necessity, knowing that have to and must all tell that something is very important. Must is a bit stronger than have to. And don't and doesn't have to, we have a choice, but with must not, we don't have a choice. And then we talked about pronunciation, intonation, what is going on with your voice. If your voice tends to stay at the same tone, then you're not finished yet. But if your voice drops down lower, goes down, that means that you're done, that you're finished talking or finished making your point. Then we looked at the speaking skill as strategies for interrupting politely, what gestures and sounds we can make and words we can say to interrupt politely, but also what we can do to hold the floor if we don't want the person to interrupt us. Right? And then we discussed a bit about your speaking project. So good. You're amazing. Thank you very much for joining me today. I will see you very soon. God bless you. Bye-bye.